The Todd Father is in the house. Indiana takes on Ohio State tonight on the Peacock. If you're in the Bloomington area, you can head out to Hoosier Hanks East over on College Mall Road and watch the game. Stick around for after the game with the Todd Father, Todd Leary, as he will break down the action for you and tell you what happened from the real standpoint.
Serve wine and cheese.
There you go. Lots of wine
Lots of
with
wine.
that. Lots of cheese with the wine. I mean,
Yep.
Exactly. Both teams are 13-9, and this is a like I said, both of these teams, they've lost 6 out of 7 Ohio State, 4 out of 5 for Indiana. Confidence can't be very high. Now you got to go on the road. That makes it a little bit worse. You got to deal with the road that adds a little bit to that. Whatever it's, sleeping last night, all that crap that you go through as a player. But you probably were never in a situation like this where because you played on such good teams. But what are these guys thinking? What do they have to do to get out of this funk and use this? This is an opportunity to steal a Big Ten game and a road game at the same time.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, so here's where I think the road kind of be misleading and because the stats are so crazy about teams not being able to win on the road. But right now, Indiana is struggling. Indiana fans are great fans, very knowledgeable fans. We know we're knowledgeable fans. When things happen that we don't like on our home court, we tend to have become booing fans recently. So honest, I'll be honest with you. I don't think it's that as much of a big of a deal being on the road as maybe it is in some years, because right now our home crowd boos when we miss free throws. They boo when we go 0 for whatever from the 3-point line, when we're losing to Penn State. And I'm not blaming the fans. Everybody's frustrated. I get it. I am in no way, shape, or form blaming the fans. But I'm just making the statement of the players now go on the road. You know you're going to get booed the whole game. The only way you shut those boos up is to make some shots and get a lead and dominate the game. And you know what you're going to get in this environment. And, you couldn't – the records are identical. You couldn't really mirror these teams any more than what they are. Like, they are in very similar situations. They both had higher expectations than where they are right now, which means they've underachieved and are trying to get things turned around. And neither ship is heading in the right direction. They're both going down the toilet bowl. And so one of them is going to have to win. And one of them is going to be in a better position tomorrow than they are today. And, for Indiana to do that, I'm just going to simplify it and say whatever the game plan is and whatever it is we are trying to accomplish, the stat line at the end of the day has to read Indiana has to have made at least 8 3-pointers. I don't care how many they shoot. And they have to shoot 70% from the free throw line. I don't care how many they shoot. Hopefully a lot. But if they get to those 2 stats, I think they have a pretty decent chance of winning the game. If they don't get to those 2 stats, I think they have a very, very small chance of winning the game. And, that Coach Woodson doesn't make it a focal point for the team in making 3-pointers. So, I'm going to say they're going to have to – I don't think they're going to run a lot of plays for 3-pointers. We don't have a ton of great 3-point shooters, so I'm not blaming him for not running that. But I don't think you can win in today's basketball world, especially on the road in the Big Ten, without making a decent amount of 3-pointers. And 3 or 4 or 5 is not a decent amount. I think 8's got to be a minimum.
And Indiana has not really decided. Mackenzie Abaco is, as you said, the best shooter on the team, and he is. But it's like the team doesn't have the dynamic of this is the best 3-point shooter and this is another 3-point shooter. I know the guys that can do it, but the offense is not always seems
Right.
like it
Well,
presents the opportunities it should.
it's real simple with this, Jim. Let's just you and I talk about it. Whether we agree or disagree, our top four are going to be the same, even if they're not in the same order. But best shooters, in my opinion, are Mackenzie Mbako from the 3-point line. Mackenzie Mbako, Kalel Ware, and Malik Renew probably are 2 and 3 for me in that case. And then, actually, we're going to talk best 3-point shooters. Anthony Leal would be second. And then Kalel Ware and Malik Renew would be 3 and 4. That's my my 4 best percentage 3-point shooters. And 2 of those guys, I'm expecting to be inside the paint 95% of our offensive possessions. So I don't have them in a position to be out shooting the ball, which puts Galloway in a position to shoot more from the outside. And it's not a formula, right? We don't have a recipe right now we don't spread the floor out. What we try to do, I think, I say this every game, we just come down and we try to figure out a way to pound the ball inside. 1995 version of college basketball, and we're going to beat you pounding it on the inside. And that's going to work a few games throughout the season, but it's not going to work in the long run. You're not going to win games in 2024 NCAA college basketball by only pounding the ball inside. You got to knock shots down from the outside.
Is this a game where somebody that like Anthony Leal is going to have one of those games like he had a while back? Somebody different is going to have to step up. And I'm not talking about Kalel Ware or Malik Renew. Mackenzie Mbako needs to have a good night, but somebody else has to step up because, like you said, while Renew and Ware are 2 of the best shooters, they're also the guys you need down in the paint because they're scoring at a very, very high rate there. Although you still need the 3-point shooting, that needs to come from somebody else.
Yeah, and so let me get past the 3-point shooting because I'll just harp on that all day long. But let's pull out an individual player, and let's just say Xavier doesn't play again in this game, and let's say that Gabe Cupps is playing 25 to 30 minutes as the starting point guard of this team. He has to become more aggressive offensively. He has to be a threat to not only shoot the basketball from the outside, but drive and penetrate into the lane and create stuff. He cannot just be a facilitator that catches the ball on the outside and reverses it from one side to the other. That's not what a point guard does. That's not what all good teams that have good point guards, that's not what their point guard does. And that's all he's doing for us right now. He's taking 2 shots a game at most and barely making anything, because he's not aggressive. The coaches have to get to him and say, hey, look, I don't care if you're 0 for 10, 0 for 15. I don't care. Take the pressure off of him from you've got to shoot 70% perspective and say you've got to be a threat to shoot the ball. You've got to be a threat to drive the ball and shoot little runners in the lane, which is what he's really good at. Creating inside, getting guys open. And when's the last time you saw him drive the ball inside the lane and make a crafty little pass inside or kick out for a 3-pointer? I can't even think of one all season long. And this guy's played a lot of minutes. I'm not blaming him. I'm not blaming the coaching staff. I'm saying I don't care why it hasn't happened in the past. It needs to start happening. And if he's not a threat, if he comes in today and shoots 3 times in this game, I don't care if he's 3 for 3. We're not going to win. If out of a 25 to 30 minute player on our floor isn't a bigger threat than to shoot the ball 3 times in this game, we're not going to win no matter what. I don't care what all the other stats are.
Yeah, because for one, the defense just lays off of you, which allows them to make it much more difficult for whomever else they're switching off to, and you don't have the opportunity for the points, and 3 beats 2 every time. I'm not saying that Ohio State is going to light it up, but we have seen way too many teams do that against Indiana. And I'm not just talking about Big Ten teams. It happened in the not the preseason, but the non-conference portion of the season, whether it was Army or Kennesaw State or Florida Gulf Coast State, whomever it was. There were guys that didn't have their leading scores and still are able to light Indiana up on the perimeter. And at this stage of the game, this part of the season, I don't understand that, with or without injuries to Xavier Johnson.
Yeah, and I don't expect that out of Ohio State, but maybe that's probably why it will happen, because we don't expect it. They're not a great shooting team either. But when you look at it, like, I'm just focusing on Indiana and what Indiana has to do. You can't go in there hoping Ohio State has a bad game. You've got to expect them to have a really good game, and you've got to beat them on their home court, expecting them to have a really good game. And so with that being the case, you have to have 5 guys on the court. So I don't care if it's someone that comes in off the bench. The 5 players that are on the court have to be contributing something positively to your team, offensively and defensively. You can't have a guy that's just a filler. We can't fill any spots just to not make mistakes. And this team is not built or in a position to score tons of points without having all 5 guys as contributors. They don't all have to have career nights. I'm not saying that. Please don't think I'm saying we've got to have Anthony Hill come in and make 8 3-pointers. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we have to have a good contribution from all 5 people that are on the court when they're on the court. And when you put guys in that are not threats, I mean, I honestly believe that's why Caleb Banks hasn't played very much recently, because offensively, he's not really a threat. I think we've seen Anthony Walker's minutes go down because, although I do kind of consider him a threat offensively, other than offensive rebounding and getting loose balls inside, he's not really a threat to score. And I mean, right now, we put Gabe Cupps in a terrible position in that Penn State game. And someone not getting a hold of him and telling him, when they're pressuring you like that, drive right around them and go all the way to the basket. Like, Penn State was not worried about him driving to the basket because they knew as soon as he crossed half court, he was going to stop and start running the offense. And that's a bad spot to put a point guard in.
Absolutely. And Indiana, like you said, Indiana is not getting anything out of the point guard right now with the loss of Xavier Johnson and Gabe Cupps being put in a position that he's not quite ready for. But it's kind of up to him. He's going to have to step up. He was good enough to get a scholarship to play at Indiana, and I'm not trying to put pressure on him, but it's 3/4 of the way through the season, so you're no longer quite a freshman. You're a freshman and a half, and you just got to step up and do some things, and that is going to be on him to push that issue.
Well, and here's the hard part. Like, he's doing what they're asking him to do. Like, he's running and controlling the offense and doing all that. Like, he's not making mistakes. Like, he's doing kind of what they're asking him to do. Here's where I'm in agreement with you. Here's what's got to happen. He's got to say, okay, well, we don't run plays for me or whatever it is. If they're going to pressure me like that, the only way for me to relieve the pressure from another guard like that is to be a threat to drive the ball all the way in the lane. So, in my opinion, Gabe Cupps is going to have to take some risks. He's going to have to risk, he's going to roll the dice and drive into the lane and pull up and shoot a couple shots and make them, or drive into the lane and get guys to commit to him and drop the ball off for some easy baskets inside. No coach is ever going to be upset with that, even though that's not the play. That's not what we're running. That's not what we're supposed to run. But Gabe Cupps is going to have to take some gambles. He's going to have to roll the dice on himself, bet on himself, and go in there and try to make some plays happen. And you haven't heard me one time say shoot 9 3-pointers. I would love for him to be a threat shooting the 3-point line, but right now, what we really need him to do is to take some gambles and drive and penetrate with that ball and make some things happen. And I think our offense changes dramatically if we have a guard that's doing that. We all expected that guard to be Xavier. For a multitude of reasons, that's not been the case this season. So whoever is in there at that position needs to create some stuff not only for themselves on their own, but for other players, not just be a ball facilitator, getting the ball moving around the outside.
Xavier Johnson, as we said, not playing for Indiana, so that leaves them shorthanded, and they were already shorthanded at the guard position. Ironically, if I asked you who Indiana has beaten the most all time, the easy guess is Northwestern, and that's correct. But the program that is second that they have the most wins over was a little surprising to me. And actually, it's a two-way tie. But one of the teams is Ohio State. The other one is Michigan. And I'm like, damn. And I'm like, they still lead the series substantially. And I'm like, it's crazy. And Indiana beat this team already once this year. Does that give them any kind of advantage, or has that been lost with the time between then and now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit lost. I would say they kind of know, I guess, the recipe for what they need to do, what they are going to be able to do, and take advantage of against Ohio State a little bit. So I'll say maybe a little bit with that. But I mean, let's take the names off the jerseys and let's just be straight up college basketball fans from Arkansas that are not tied to Indiana or Ohio State in any way. And if you're just looking at these two teams on paper and you look at who they've beaten and their stats and their records and everything like that, I think the average college basketball fan would look at this and say, well, that team's going to win when they're at home, and when they go to the other place, that team's going to win when they're at home. And that's truly exactly the way this game looks like it should play out. And if Indiana doesn't do something better than what they have been doing, that is exactly how it's going to play out. They're going to go in there and get beat unless they do something better than what they have been doing in the past. And in my humble opinion, that is shooting the basketball. And yes, I'm simplifying it to that. They can miss switches. They can miss how they handle rotations and how they don't handle ball screens and all that. All they want. They can get out rebounded. If they shoot the ball better, they're going to have a chance to win. That's it. Penn State didn't play great against Indiana. You know what they did great? They made a bunch of tough shots. They made three-pointers with, and you heard the announcers even say it, you couldn't guard it any better than that. That's just a great shot. That happened numerous times in that game. They didn't play great. They shot the ball great. End of story. I think Indiana, I don't think Indiana has to shoot it great. I think they have to shoot it better than they have in order to win at Ohio State.
And they've got to be a little bit better with the basketball, a 13-6 turnover margin in the last game, but a bigger margin was points off the bench. And that was a staggering 18-3 differential. Indiana is getting nothing from the bench. Caleb Banks is just disappeared. You mentioned Walker. His minutes have gone down. He played 5 minutes in the last game. CJ Gunn did play 11 minutes and hit one shot and his only free throw. So he contributed in that span, but that's it. And then you've got Gabe Cupps, who we talked about, who provided his normal 2 points. You're getting zipped from your point guard, and then you're getting zipped from your bench. It's really difficult to beat teams who are getting contributions from a lot of guys.
Yeah, well, and it's not. This is no secret formula. Like if you have a point guard that's not scoring any points or really even taking any shots, he has to have some other staggering statistic, like 16 assists in a game, or double-digit assists. He has to be creating something for someone else. Otherwise, all he is a ball facilitator. He's not a point guard. They're reversing the ball back out to him, and he's throwing it to another guy, who in turn is probably just throwing it to another guy. Like he's just facilitating ball movement, as opposed to being a point guard that's actually creating things for your team. And that's all the teams that are really good. I don't care if their best player on their team is the center. I don't care. All the teams that are good have a good guard. Like in college basketball, they have a good guard, and that guard doesn't necessarily have to be the leading scorer or the best shooter, but he has to be good, and he has to be able to create things for other people. and get the ball where it needs to go and drive and make shots when he needs to make shots.